Hello and welcome again to Conscious TV. My name is Renate McNay and my guest is still Dr. Manjir Samanta-Laughton. We just finished an interview and we kept talking and we thought we actually should put that on film because it's a little bit more about the scientific questions I had, which I didn't come to ask her in our interview. So one thing is absolute reality. I know what you say about the black hole principle, and it's fascinating because so far as I understood and knew that everything which comes close to a black hole is gulped up by the black hole. But you actually say there is light coming out. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, it's interesting because black holes, the concept of black holes have come out of Einstein's theory of relativity.
Yes.
And which said that if space-time curvature gets so great, then it can collapse, a star can collapse on itself and become a place of infinite density and infinite gravity, suck everything in.
Yes.
And in the 1960s, somebody called these black holes, you know, the concept you're sucking everything in that comes past the event horizon. Now, black holes remained theoretical concepts for quite a long time. What's happened in the last 10, 15 years or so is we're actually seeing black holes, and through our telescopes, Hubble, etc. But interestingly, they're not behaving as we thought. Mm-hmm. First of all, we're finding them in the centre of every galaxy, and all over galaxies as well. And this is not me saying this is the actual astrophysics. Mm-hmm. I haven't got a telescope that can do this in my back garden, believe me. And they're also finding them everywhere, and they're also finding that far from being black, they're actually really bright. Mm. They're actually spewing out material at the speed of light. And sometimes they're spewing out electrons, sometimes the antimatter, positrons. Sometimes they're spewing out gamma rays, which are formed when antimatter and matter come together and make light. So they can't make sense of it. They eventually, in 2009, they said, okay, guys, we have to admit, black holes must have something to do with creating galaxies. Otherwise, why would we be finding them in every single galaxy? Mm-hmm. And did you know that the size of the galaxy has a direct proportion to the size of the black hole at the centre?
Wow.
Yeah. So when they plotted them out, they went, there was an absolute definite relationship. So they realised they had to admit black holes are creative. But it's not quite in the same way that I said in my book in 2006, and I first published in 2003, when I had a vision and I saw that the reason why the material is coming out of a black hole is not because the black hole sucks it all up and spits it out, or burps, as some of the astrophysics say. Burps, they actually say that black holes burp. But because it's actually coming from beyond our normal vision, beyond our normal measurement, what I'm calling the perception horizon at the speed of light. And I say that actually there's a whole realm of many dimensions beyond the speed of light. That's the realm of mysticism. Yeah. So actually what black holes are the creative centres of the universe. You have the infinity at the centre, which is the absolute reality that you're speaking about.
Yes.
And from this absolute reality, we can say it in a spiritual way as well as a scientific way, it differentiates itself because, as many teachers say, what does absolute reality want to do? Learn about itself. How does it do it? It differentiates itself and pretends to be different and separate. Yes. So the way it does that, it goes spirals, and the spiral, because Fibonacci, the golden mean, is present throughout all of nature, it spirals throughout all the dimensions, gets to the edge of what we call our reality, and it splits into two, the electron and the positron. The electron is the antimatter. It goes into a kind of mirror world, and the positron is the antimatter. The electron is the matter, and it creates our world. The matter goes on to create our world. So that's where the split happens. That's where the absolute reality splits and pretends to be separate, when actually, ultimately, it's always all one.
Could it, that's interesting with the absolute reality and the object reality, because I had this experience once, and it's almost like the absolute, the breath of the absolute, if you want.
Yeah.
I was in meditation, and I sank so deep, and I was gone.
Wow.
And in spiritual terms, that's called divine coma.
Yeah.
And it was sinking into completely black velvet softness, and then consciousness is gone. And then the coming out was very much, as you say, it spits out matter and matter forms.
Right.
And I never heard it explained, and now it makes so much sense to me what I experienced.
Well, what's so amazing is that although you've had this amazing experience, we actually have the measurements. So we now can see, even though it's puzzling astrophysicists, all these gamma rays and all these electrons and positrons coming out of these black holes at the speed of light. We actually can measure that. Yeah. And you talk about the breath of the absolute. The whole thing is breathing. Yeah. 1 minute it breathes one way, and the next minute the antimatter and matter combine again to form a gamma ray burst. Yeah. So this is the breath of Brahma, and we can measure that breathing in our own galaxy. The astrophysicists don't know why this is happening, but if you understand the black hole principle, you predict the breath, the in and out. You actually can see the breath happening even in our own galaxy. This is what you've experienced, we can now measure. So science and spirituality is now coming together in the most amazing way. Yes.
Well, another thing which puzzles me is we know object reality doesn't really exist. Yeah, it's mainly what we are looking at in perceiving as chair or clock or table is mainly empty space. So if this space doesn't exist, also I can knock on it, then that says also I don't exist. And so what does the hearing? What has the experience? What does the listening? That is something which really puzzles me. Is there an explanation for that?
Well, what we call existence is what is below the speed of light. So when that light splits at the perception horizon into the charged particles, it can create things like this. How is this held together? Through charge.
Right.
So when things are below the speed of light, that's where we get what we call objects. Ultimately, though, they're all part of the one light. The matter and the antimatter are actually, ultimately, they cancel out. If you go up to the higher dimensions, they actually cancel out. But you are both here and not here at the same time. Yeah. You are both the absolute and the differentiation at the same time. The black hole principle gives a way of scientifically explaining what mystics have been experiencing the whole time, that they have a body, but they dissolve in meditation, because they're experiencing, more of the ultimate reality. Yeah. And that ultimate reality is the center of the black hole. And in my theory, I say that everything follows the same principle, and the book, you have to read the book to actually see all the references, from atoms to even chakras. I get into trouble talking about chakras, but why not? It's the same principle as part of Indian knowledge,
There is, even in Sufism, there is something below or beyond the chakra system, which is called the Lataifa, which are the door gates, just like the chakras are the energy points in the physical body. The Lataifas are the door gates, the points, or you would say the black hole, into our essence, and into who we are.
And why not? Because these mystics have had an observation. The scientific method starts with observation. Right. And if a mystic has had an observation, for me that's equally valid. You know, so over the years, many people have observed things like chakras, but we're not just talking about chakras, we're talking about solar flares, we're talking about Jupiter flares, we're talking about the fact that stars like red dwarfs that are supposed to be quiescent are giving off bipolar jets. We're talking about the mechanism behind terrestrial gamma ray flashes in our Earth's upper atmosphere, the mechanism behind lightning. At every single level is doing the same principle. But the interesting thing, to answer your question, is that at every single centre of every single fractal black hole, everything is, at every level, black holes on black holes, is that undifferentiated centre of a black hole, the sort of eye of the storm, you know, that's the same. And that centre of a black hole is the same centre, you know, no matter where. The whole of the universe has the same central black hole.
I just feel excited about it.
So that's the absolute reality, that undifferentiated. But you know, it decided for some reason in consciousness differentiate itself, pretend to be separate, and that's the bit that's below the speed of light, that's got charge, that's got mass, all of that. But it's all a game.
It's great. You just gave me a piece of a puzzle. Well, anyway. And one more question. You talk in your newsletter about we are meeting our antimatter selves this year. So what our antimatter selves, antimatter selves, and why this year?
Well, the black hole principle goes in your own life as well. So we're talking about the science, the emotional journey we go on. We meet something that may be bothering us or whatever, and we have to look within. Because what it's doing is mirroring our subconscious emotions. Now, what I think is happening is that you're actually doing the same as a black hole. You've got your matter, your antimatter. When you get that aha moment, you know, when you go, oh, that's why that happened. That's when you get the moment that goes into the matter and antimatter come together in light. You no longer have any polarity about that situation. You no longer have any charge. That person doesn't bother you anymore. You got what that was all about. And you move into a centered space. And you move into that, like, you know, for a moment life is wonderful, you know. And then you're expansive, you're heart-based. And then you move on to the next situation. So that's where the matter and the antimatter are moving and breathing in your own life. And so when I say you're meeting your antimatter self, it's because you're meeting the shadow subconscious self, that aspect of your emotion that is coming up to heal. And I think we're doing that big time in 2012 because, you know, as we're entering this year, a lot of people are speaking about, gosh, it does feel different. You know, keeping an open mind, but as we're entering this year, the things do seem to be changing. And so we're really seeing, you know, the polarities coming together, and maybe there's going to be some interesting event later on.
Wow, it's all a big mystery. You know, I got on Facebook a little note this morning from a group, and there was, I know you know Brian Swim.
Yes.
Yeah, and somebody asked him if he can explain shortly what this evolution is about, or the scope of this evolution. And he said, oh, that's very simple. You just take hydrogen gas and leave it alone, and it starts forming rose bushes and giraffes and humans. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Okay, Manjir, thank you for giving me another 15 minutes. And I just want to show your books again. So that's Punk Science, Inside the Mind of God. And the interview we did today, earlier, was In the Genius Groove. It's a fascinating book, and I know it will bring you in your own genius groove if you just read through it. And thank you for watching Conscious TV. Goodbye. Goodbye, Manjir.
Thank you.